kind of
Um,
the
yeah. um, Hi everyone. This is the next kind of podcast for Global Punk, and I've just been saying to David how I hate going from us just talking normally before I pressed record to what I need to be like now, as in some kind of interviewer, kind of radio DJ type interviewer. But still, so let me introduce David Vila Diéguez, who formed, I think that's right, David, isn't it? Formed PSN Iberia, or was one of the founding members anyway. So could you introduce yourself and just give us a quick outline of PSN Iberia as well while you're there?
Yep, I'm gonna go into full interview mode too.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
All
Yeah.
right. So yeah, well, in Spain, and when I say Spain, I mean the whole like the Basque Country, Catalonia, Galicia, and the entire Spain. So places where not only Spanish is spoken to. We all had different people that were working on music, and from the Spanish departments, as in the English departments developed, subcultural studies and all this. In the Spanish departments, it's kind of like a bit backwards in that sense, and they only study literature. They're getting into cultural studies, but it's kind of like slower than the English departments for whatever reason. So we wanted to really get together and do something because we didn't have a place to go to. And especially those who study punk, because it's bad enough that you study music, but if you study punk, you're like probably not gonna find a place, or it's gonna be even harder. So at one point, I did my dissertation on Spanish punk, and I got a grant to go to the UK when I don't know what museum had a punk exhibition like a few years ago, when the anniversary of the Sex Pistols album or something like that.
The Barbican. I know that they had one.
Probably. So I went there to the UK, and then I looked up things about punk, and then I found out that Gareth, who's Gareth Dillon Smith, who was one of my professors at the institute, the university in the UK that I went to, was involved in something about punk and punk scholars and I don't know what. So I looked it up, and I found this big group, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I want to be part of this. But I want to be part of this, but I also want to be part of this being part of something that is connected to our research back in Spain.
Yeah.
So I was very happy when the whole the different sections came up, and then we formed the Spanish one, because it really gave us a place to be. I went to the Keysmith in Porto.
Yeah.
To me, again, Porto is very close from my family's town. So I speak Portuguese, my family speaks Portuguese. So I was like, fuck, this is just ideal. So I went, and and we found this huge group of people working on things that we also worked on. And then we created our own section, and just a feeling of belonging somewhere, really.
So you came to find out about the PSNs then through the legend that is Gareth Dillon Smith.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just to reiterate, he is a legend, isn't he?
He's a legend. I think there's even a T-shirt that says that he is a legend.
Yes. It was because there's a long story about ICMP not letting me into one of their conferences, and Gareth put on there, Mike Dines is a legend.
So he was
lined up ICMP, yeah.
Oh, so it was him wearing a T-shirt with your okay.
And then I gave a talk in London, and I put on the screen, I had a picture of him with with the T-shirt on, saying Mike Dines is a legend, and I put it underneath, Gareth Dillon Smith is a legend. So it's now a picture of me giving a talk like
meta pictures.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about like those tensions in academia that you were finding then from kind of Iberia, that kind of part of the world? That are you saying that there wasn't that much respect for kind of punk scholarship?
Or... I mean, if you like myself, I went to traditional Spanish literature department, which I know is literature and culture. There's cultural studies. It's basically the same thing that happened with English departments. Like Birmingham, when they started studying cultural studies, but they all came from literature studies, like Raymond Williams, all that same kind of path. but for whatever reason, I don't know, in Spanish departments, they're very, I don't know, backwards in that sense. Not maybe not as much today, but there are many, like they say in Spanish, old dinosaurs, which means like that some people they just don't leave, and they just keep studying the same things, old things. But yeah, so it was kind of hard, even when I when I presented my stuff, or even in classes, I could see that people wouldn't take it seriously. Like it'd be like you either study Shakespeare, but like the Spanish equivalent, like Cervantes or something like that, or it's not really worth it. It's just like these, like cultural expression that some people, in somewhere weird people had, but it's not relevant. And
Yeah.
so that was one thing. And then the other thing is that if you get out of that department, it was also hard to have the recognition for studying something that is not in English or in the American English world. So it was like, so you have to be in the Spanish department so you can do that, but at the same time being something related to punk or subcultural studies so you can do that. And that was the other thing. That's why I was saying that it was really cool to see, to get to meet the Punk Scholars Network.
Yeah, sure.
But at the same time be able to get all these people from Spain, or people interested in Spanish punk. Because that's the other thing that I've always felt too, that you go to places where you might have people studying punk, but first of all, it's like everything's going to be in English. And I'm like, man, there's so many scholars who maybe don't speak English well, or maybe they're not communicating as well as they could. And here we are, like 30 people who speak Spanish, one person who speaks English, and we all speak in English. And this person is taking the floor because he's the one that speaks better. So it was kind of like being between the Spanish departments and people involved in punk who also kind of like respect the Spanish, and the Spanish departments that respect punk. Like,
so you went to ICMP, found out about the PSN through the legend that is Gareth Smith. And could you tell us a little bit about your journey after that? Because you're not in Europe now, are you?
No, I'm in the US. I mean, actually, right now I'm in Puerto Rico, but I'm teaching. I work in the US. So I went to the ICMP, and after that, I went to Nashville. I did my PhD at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, while I was teaching Spanish at the university, because I did a music major, a music degree at the ICMP. But before that, I did a degree on literature, on Spanish literature in Spain. That's why while I was in the UK doing my degree at ICMP, I was teaching Spanish at Surrey University in Guildford.
Yeah, you said, today.
So I moved to the US. I did my PhD over there, and after that, I got a job at the University of Texas, and that's what I teach now, University of Texas at El Paso, and I'm teaching there right now, and I keep doing my research and teaching. I've been teaching about music and social movements, which is really cool. And in the Spanish department. So again, that's kind of like opening, and I have some kind of work going on with people from other departments that do music, punk studies. But yeah, it's been. I mean, I've been really, to be honest, I play music. I've got my own band, my own project, and I've been just going around the world wherever that took me, or wherever I thought that could work. And that took me to London first, then from London to the US, and then. It's funny, but I always say, like, the PhD and the rest just happened along the way.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the plan.
And in terms of punk-related research or punk-related playing, have you got any kind of future projects? Any projects that you're thinking of doing?
Well, right now I just finished an article about masculinities and rock music, which includes punk, but it's not just punk. And it's basically based on Simon Frith's and Angela McRobbie's idea of cock rock. And I'm talking about how there's this specific kind of Spanish cock rock who mixes like Spanish nationalism with cock rock. So like a national Spanish version of being a cock rock.
Yeah.
And which again, like masculinities and nationalism and that kind of anti-immigration and all that comes from the masculinity and the need to prove that you're strong, blah 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 and all that. So I'm working on that and how specifically in rock music they build this discourse on a specific way of being a man that involves being being sexist, of course, but also being a Spanish nationalist person that is against the Basque culture, Basque or Galician, Catalonian, and only speaking Spanish and like this super Spanish macho. So that's my current.
And where can we read that? When is that coming
out? That's I just sent it out, so hopefully it'll get accepted and published. Okay. But yeah, well, we'll see if it happens. But okay. It's all in, that one's in Spanish. That one's in Spanish, and I've got another one that I sent, and another one that I'm working on about Spanish punk, in which I try to sort of explain the different ways in which one can understand what Spanish punk is, taking into account Spanish cultural studies. So what I do there is basically, I've read a couple of articles on punk, and I don't want to say like from foreign scholars, but like from people who, of course, they're talking about Spanish punk, but I can see how they just took everything they learned, from the Birmingham school and just bunk it onto Spain and be like, okay, this is what's happening in Spain based on this that people said in England about the English context. Well, you got to take into account the specific Spanish context if you want to talk about Spanish punk. So things, for instance, people talk about Spanish punk, and normally they don't talk about punk made in Spain that is in a different language but Spanish. And that to me is a problem already, because, I mean, I'd say the most prominent or the most important punk in Spain happened in the Basque country.
Yeah.
And like many was in Basque, like much of it was in Basque.
Right.
So you got to pay attention to that. And when you explain Spanish punk based exclusively on punk in Spanish from Madrid, I mean, it doesn't really give you the whole picture. And then, things such as people taking that and explaining the rest of Spain from that perspective happen. And that's, again, I'm not gonna say it's not the truth, but it's just giving a blurred vision of what really Spanish punk is. Yeah. So taking into account the language, also taking into account the fact that in Spain there was a punk that was very connected to the power, because after the Franco dictatorship, they tried to make Spain look cool and modern. So the government financed, they funded like a movement. They funded concerts, albums. So it was a state financed. So in that sense, there is this punk that is governmental, that it doesn't really, it's not like anti-establishment. It's punk more in the aesthetic way. So they have the same kind of aesthetics, but they're not really against the government or anything. They're just getting money from the government, and they don't even care about anything. They just do the music. Then there's another punk that is more anti-establishment, and that's the one that maybe, I mean, it depends what you want to study, but I just want to say that there's two kinds of punks. You can't say, I read an article in which they said that punk in Spain was the mainstream, for instance. And I'm like, no, that's because you're only paying attention to one specific kind of punk. Yeah. So like just trying to make it more, I guess, problematizing, if that's even a word in English, the punk of Spain, taking into account everything that is happening in Spain and everything that's been studied in cultural studies in Spain. So we just don't apply, again, subcultures and upper culture, that kind of like, rigid method that doesn't really apply everywhere.
Yeah. Are you looking to publish? You're working on this at the moment, you say?
One of this one that I just mentioned that I'm trying to write with different ways in which to understand Spanish punk. Yeah, that one I want to send it to the punk and post-punk journal, and Yeah, and then I've got another one that I sent already, in which I compared these two punks that I just mentioned, the aesthetic one and the more political one. And because there's always this in Spain, they said, the youth of the after Franco, after the dictatorship, that all these youth involved in punk were just there for the fun.
Mm.
And again, so I said, like, there was always also this other part that, yeah, they were there for the fun, but look at the lyrics, they were engaged with so many different, communities, and so they were actually doing some political work too. So like, you can't just look at this and draw the whole picture of the entire country. That one I just send it to, and then I'll see if it gets published.
Right. There is going to be a Punk Reader 4 coming out. The call for papers is due to go out. Intellect have got to confirm that they would like to publish the book, but it looks as if they are. And it will be punk in Portugal, Iberia, Greece, Spain, and that's going to be edited by Paulo Guerra is leading on that. So I'll give you the heads up about that anyway. Like I say, Intellect are currently looking at publishing it through the Global Punk series, and they've got to take it to a meeting to confirm, but they like the idea of that. But I'll email you about that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, David, thank you very much for this chat. It's been absolutely wonderful. I'm glad you're okay, and it's good to see you after all these years. And I will email you about the punk book in your part of the world. And I hope to see you soon. It will be good to see you perhaps in Kismith at one point, or if you're back over in London, it would be great to buy you a cup of tea or a beer or something, you know.
Yeah, mate, for sure. Thanks a lot for the chat. And I'll hopefully be in London sometime soon. I don't know if they're going to let me in now with all the Brexit thing. I don't know if I have to bring my passport. I have to give some blood. I don't know, but I got to go back there and revisit some of the places that I used to spend my time.
Warn me when you're coming over so I can tell immigration not to let you in.
Exactly. I'll let you know for sure.
See you later, my friend. Bye.
Cheers.